Hello everybody, Brian from Apex Detail here. It is good to have you back. This is the third installment of the series. We have the hood now completely cut and it looks a heck of a lot better. Not perfect, but better. Alright, with that done, we can hop to the back of the car where we have pretty much the same type of damage. The solvent pop, stains, etching, scratches, swirls, and or mark down in the comment section, why didn't you just take care of that through wet sanding? Under normal conditions, I would have. That's not the what we're concentrating here on this series, and I'll get to that. We'll take care of that in another series. I will give you a little taste of that. So, with wet sanding, let's do this little area here, and I'm going to show you how to protect by masking on these little areas. You're not just masking to protect emblems or trim. You can also use masking tape to protect the edges, and that's what we're doing here. Not only that, but we're keeping that wet sanding residue from going down into the cracks between panels and causing you to you'll have more work to do after you're done. And as you can see here, we're up on the corner, the edge of the panel. Both edges where the panels come together, they'll both be protected, and you will not have residue leaking down into those areas. Now, when it comes to ridges, high spots, or peaks on panels, let's hop over to this other car and I'll show you how to take care of them. Just grab the 1/4-inch tape, roll of tape, masking tape, and protect those areas just like that, right on the peak, right on the edge. Then when your pad, doesn't matter what type of pad you're using, crosses over that peak, intentionally, unintentionally, it will not shave that peak and remove the clear, and it'll save your backside. And there's also a molding back here at the back window. We want to protect that as well. All right, let's get to wet sanding. And with damage as deep as what we have here in a vet, we're going to start off with 2000 grit to make the initial cut. When it comes to sanding blocks, you can buy the rid sticks, you can buy something, but I have enough laying around my shop where I can make it work. Just make sure it's tight, make sure it's taut. Pull taut, and you won't have the edges sticking out like that. Those will be the first thing to make contact with the surface, and that will cause uneven sanding. Pull it taut, you can hold it, you can tape it. As you can see here, I taped mine, and I also then cut the paper a little bit longer than the block so the block isn't sticking out past the paper and making marks on the surface of your vehicle. And then this is where I could show you my technique. Everybody seems to have their own technique. This is mine. That's what I'm comfortable with, and that's what gets the job done for me and gets me results. Short strokes from one edge of the panel to the other, pushing that residue away from me. And speaking about residue, flush constantly, fresh water, 32-ounce spray bottle, whatever you have to keep the pad clean, to keep your sandpaper disc or sheet clean. You get a lot of that spent residue, which is clear coat that we're pulling up. That's what the white milky residue is, clumped up on your sheet. It's going to cause more harm than good. Every once in a while, I'll grab a damp microfiber that I have within arm's reach as well and clean off the area. Rinse off the block one more time and proceed. This is where the masking tape comes into play. The little bit of time you spent to protect now will pay off as you can come up to the edge. You can go over the tape. It's the low profile 3M. As you can see here, I'm just going right up over the tape, and I don't have to worry about either one of those corners. Now we're getting to the area where the deck lid curves up to the back window, and I can show you how I take care of curvatures leading up to an edge. Not sure if you can see it or not, but I do not have the corner or the edge of this panel up here protected. I just have the molding protected. So as you can see, I'm creeping up to the peak of the curvature, and I'm stopping right before I get to the edge. Rinse off the area, keep it clean, use a damp microfiber. As you can see here, that's the milky residue. That is clear coat that we shaved off. This is a point of the video where we could take a timeout or a sidebar and talk about wet sanding without using paint depth gauges. As we can see as we get up close, you can still see the reflection of the light even though we have wet sanded. That's because the valleys of the texture of this Corvette have not been reached as of yet. Back to the whiteboard again. If we look at a layer of clear coat on top of the base coat and we look at it from the side microscopically, you would see that it is rather bumpy and textured. Now, some cars textured more than others. Corvette's notorious for their horrible orange peel texture. Guys, manufacturers could make cars perfectly flat with no texture at all, but it's left in the paint for a purpose. It actually protects the clear coat. Everyday drivers, cars that are used for the most part to go to work, to go shopping, to do chores, they're going to come in contact with things. Branches down your driveway, going through the car wash, you know how horrible they are on the finish of your paint. And when something comes in contact of the paint, it'll hop off of those peaks. Normally doesn't go down in through to the valleys unless it's something really that has a lot of pressure on the clear and is digging down deep. So where we have this sanded is pretty much right to here, just below where a lot of damage is going to take place. If you sand far enough where you do not see those valleys that are still a little bit shiny, that means you have sanded pretty much down far enough where all the peaks and valleys are gone and you're really getting deep into the clear coat. If you see a nice smooth surface, clear with no peaks or valleys, you need to stop and reassess how far you want to go because you're getting pretty deep. You're getting down to where most of the UVA, UVB protection is, and you do not want to remove it. I hope that helps. And that's where we can get into the conversation of paint depth gauges and why I do not introduce them to absolutely every video and use them after every pass, because I want you to actually get used to working without them. On most cars, you can't use them, fiberglass cars, unless you have the real expensive DeFelsco $3,000-$4,000 unit where you can see every layer on every surface. The cheaper ones are only going to give you all layers on metal surfaces. So get used to working without them, and this is showing you how you can keep an eye on clear coat without having a paint depth meter and keep you out of trouble. With the cutting portion finished, we cut or shaved all of those imperfections out of there with the 2000 grit. Now we want to finish it down a little bit. Bring it down to a certain point where we can just polish out those scratches from what I'm using here is 3000 grit. And we're just stepping down. Yes, you can absolutely grab an aggressive pad and an aggressive compound and get rid of the 2000 grit scratches or sand marks with that. However, that's going to be doing a lot of work, and you'll be hovering on that panel for quite some time, raising temperatures, spiking temperatures. What I like to do personally is just grab 3000 grit. It won't take long. Step down from the 2000 grit, and from there, all you need to do is a light polish, and you won't be hanging on that panel with a rotary and aggressive pad. Spiking temperatures, especially in one small section of a panel where the rest of the panel is room temperature, that's the clear coat's worst enemy. This is what it looks like after the 3000 grit, and we're actually starting to get just a little bit of clarity back already, and you can just polish out. Now, take a good look here in the corners. The corners have been protected, and I did make sure that I protected enough of the corner where I can reposition the tape back a little bit, still hang on the corner, and protect it. However, I can now polish and remove the 3000 grit sand marks and blend it in with the rest of the panel, and you'll see exactly what I'm doing here when I have the tape moved. Now, after the tape has been repositioned, you can see a shiny area where the sanding stops and the tape begins. Now we can polish and blend in that area and take care of any blemishes on the corners. When we're using a polish and a non-aggressive pad, you don't have to worry as much going through the clear. Just a little taste of wet sanding, and I'll do some dedicated videos on it coming up. Let's get back to the wool pads, the cutting pads. This is a Lake Country hybrid. This has wool, synthetic wool, with a little bit of foam at the base of the pad. A very unique pad. Very successful in cutting, and it finishes down a little bit better than some of the pads out there. As you can see, some of the synthetic wool fibers. Two colors. The thicker, longer, wider ones do most of the work, and the blue ones will help finish it down a little bit further. And I'll show you how this pad works as well. Might as well use this to remove the sand marks. We wouldn't have to use anything that aggressive, but I have it taped off, so let's keep working on this area. There's plenty of clear left, and I could show you, you get a nice smooth ride across the panel with the pad. It cuts quickly. It finishes down. You still will need to follow up with something to finish. On a lot of clear coats, this will leave a little bit of hazing behind, and I will show that to you. I'll work this area, let the footage roll, so you have an idea of how I tackle the curves, the edges. I mean, it's a small area, it's a tight area. You can actually use a 3-inch wool pad and backing plate. Maybe I'll grab one quick before the video ends and show you how to attack this area with a polisher, a backing plate, and a pad that small. It's actually the smaller backing plate and pad you use for more curvy areas, the better you'll get in there and stay out of trouble with them as well. All right, that'll do it. Let me remove the residue, and you can see the results from the Lake Country hybrid wool pad. That will take care of this panel. All we have to do is finish it down with a light or fine polish. As you can see there, if I hope you can get that through the work light, there's a little bit of hazing. And I can show you now that the hybrid pad needs to be cleaned out as well. You can see how it's clumping up. And the longer it's in there and the longer those clumps dry, when you get back to your panel, you're going to be causing more harm than good. Keep it clean, blow it out. I'm going to show you the grittiness here. Couple spots you'll pick out easily right here and here. Yep, exactly. Get it out of there. Blow it out of there. Use a brush, forced air, pad cleaner, whatever you have. Real quick, let me bring you in and show you all this grittiness that could be introduced back onto the car if you don't clean it out. That ends up back into the vac eventually, but you can actually be breathing that in if you don't have the right contraption. As you can see back under the microscope, all of those fibers are now clean, working independently, and you get 100% of the effectiveness from that pad. Let me show you something else real quick. This is a pad where it has been used without the residue being taken out of there, and the temperature spiking up actually caused the residue to dry out, harden up, and they are now pretty much woven within the fibers of the wool, and they're now almost a permanent fixture of that wool if you don't let it soak overnight in a solvent. If you do that, then there's also a chance that you damage the fibers as well. Look at that. I mean, if you come in contact with your car with that, you're going to be causing more damage than you would correction. All right, let's get back to the panel. You can also use the rotary with a 3-inch backing plate wool pad, and you can get the corners a lot easier. Or it's a little bit easier to manage how close you can get to the corners and the edges. You could save the 3-inch pad and backing plate for that. And also tight, curvy areas, you'll see the pad and the backing plate fits in there perfectly, especially some of those curves. All you have to do is just a little bit of a tilt on a 5 or 10 degree angle, and it fits in there perfectly. You'll get a nice even cut throughout that valley or curvature. That's going to wrap up today's video. If you're liking the content, like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell. We're almost finished with wool pads, and we can get to microfiber cutting pads and then foam cutting pads. Till the next video, catch you guys later.